Episode 1. The Letter. Liam's world had never felt as empty as it did on that morning. It was the day of his father's funeral. He sat in the small living room of the house he grew up in, staring at the brown envelope with his name scrawled on it in familiar handwriting. It was the last thing his father had left him. A simple letter. Nothing fancy, just a folded sheet of paper inside an old envelope. His father, Thomas, had been a man of few words, but those words always had meaning. Liam knew this letter would be no different. With shaky hands, he opened the envelope. Dear Liam, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. I've lived a good life, and now it's your turn to find your path. You may think I've left you alone, but that's far from true. I've left you something for messages that will guide you in understanding yourself, our relationship, and the world around you. These are not ordinary messages. They are lessons. Each one will be difficult to find, but you must complete each task before you get the next. Trust yourself, and don't give up easily. Your first task is to go to the library and find the book I've marked. You'll know which one. It will lead you to your first message. Liam sat back, puzzled. He hadn't expected this. He thought the letter would be a final goodbye, some words of comfort, or maybe an apology for the strained relationship they had. But this? A puzzle, a challenge just like his father. For years, their relationship had been distant, filled with silence and misunderstandings. His father was a logical man, always thinking several steps ahead, while Liam had always been more impulsive, driven by emotions. They had never seen eye to eye. With a sigh, Liam stood up, grabbing his jacket. He knew exactly where he had to go, the library in the heart of town, where his father used to spend hours reading. It was strange how he could still remember the way his father's eyes would light up when they talked about books, even though their conversations were rare. The library. The library was as silent and serene as Liam remembered it. The scent of old paper and the quiet hum of people flipping through pages brought back memories of his childhood. He hadn't been there in years, but it still felt familiar. His father's favorite section had always been the philosophy and logic aisle. Liam walked down the long rows of books, running his fingers along the spines. He could almost picture his father sitting in the corner, lost in a thick book on some complex topic. Then, he saw it. A small, worn-out book with a single blue ribbon sticking out from its pages. The title was faded, but Liam recognized the author, one of his father's favorites. He pulled the book from the shelf and opened it to the marked page. There, folded neatly, was another note. Well done, Liam. You found the first clue. Now, look closely at the last paragraph of this page. What does it tell you? Liam read the paragraph aloud to himself. It spoke of patience and the importance of understanding before acting. It was the kind of wisdom his father often tried to impart, though Liam rarely listened back then. But there was something more. A small word stood out, underlined in faint pencil: time. Time. The word echoed in Liam's mind. He wasn't sure what it meant yet, but he knew it was important. Reflection. As Liam left the library, he felt a strange mix of emotions. His father had always pushed him, always expected more from him, and this challenge felt no different. But for the first time, Liam wasn't frustrated. He was curious. His father was giving him one final chance to understand him, to connect in a way they never could when he was alive. Walking through the quiet streets, Liam thought about his father. There were so many things left unsaid between them. He wished he could have one more conversation, one more chance to clear the air. But maybe this journey, these messages, would give him the closure he needed. He pulled out his phone and texted Emma, his childhood friend. She had always been there for him, even when things got tough. He needed her help with this. As he pressed send, a small smile crept onto his face. Maybe this was his father's way of teaching him one final lesson, not just about life, but about love, relationships, and patience. Cliffhanger, Emma replied quickly, agreeing to meet him later that evening. As Liam sat down on a park bench, waiting for their meeting, he couldn't help but wonder what the next message would reveal. His father's logic, his wisdom, Liam had always resisted it. But now, for the first time, he was willing to listen. He knew this journey wouldn't be easy. But deep down, he felt a sense of hope, a belief that by the end of it, he might finally understand not just his father, but himself. Liam stared at the horizon as the sun began to set. The letter, the book, the message, it all meant something. But what? The answers were still out there, waiting to be uncovered. For now, he had to take it one step at a time. Episode 2. The Hidden Path. Liam sat in the cafe, staring at his phone. Emma was running late, but he didn't mind. His thoughts were still wrapped around the word time from his father's note. What could it mean? Why had his father, who was so focused on logic and reason, chosen to underline that word in particular? The cafe was quiet, with only a few customers scattered around. Liam absent-mindedly traced circles on the table, thinking back to his relationship with his father. Thomas had always been a strict man, a firm believer in discipline and structure. But he had never quite understood Liam's free-spirited nature. That tension had defined their relationship, leaving so many things unsaid between them. He sighed, glancing out the window. The city buzzed with life outside, but inside, Liam felt the weight of the silence between him and his father. Even now, a new task. Emma arrived a few minutes later, breathless and apologizing for the delay. She slid into the seat across from him, her usual smile lighting up her face. So the traffic was a nightmare, she said. But I'm here now. So, tell me what's going on. Liam handed her the letter and the book. Emma read through them carefully, her brow furrowing. It's definitely your dad, she said after a while, handing them back. Always making you work for the answers. So, what's next? I don't know, Liam admitted. There's this word time. It was underlined in the book, but I don't know what it means yet. Emma thought for a moment. Maybe it's a clue for the next step? Something to do with time? Liam nodded slowly. That made sense. His father always had a reason for everything. But what could time be pointing to? He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his messages and calendar, looking for anything that might connect. Then it hit him. His father had kept a journal, one that was always meticulously organized by date. If there was one place where time played a role in his father's life, it was in those pages. His journal, Liam said, looking up at Emma. He kept a journal, tracking everything by date. That has to be it. The journal. That evening, Liam returned to his father's house. It felt strange walking through the empty halls, knowing his father would never be there again. The air felt heavy with memories, but Liam pushed through the emotions. He had a task to complete, and he wasn't about to stop now. In his father's study, the journal was exactly where Liam expected it to be, on the top shelf of the old oak bookcase. He pulled it down, its leather cover worn from years of use. His father had been a man of routine, and each entry was dated, just as Liam had remembered. He flipped through the pages, looking for anything that might stand out. And then, there it was, an entry dated 5 years ago, around the time when their relationship had really started to deteriorate. Liam is growing distant. The entry read, I see him slipping away from the values I tried to teach him. But perhaps that is my fault. I haven't given him the time he needed to find his own way. I've been too strict, too demanding. I must remember that time is the greatest teacher, not me. Liam stared at the page, his heart pounding. His father had known. He had known all along. But why hadn't he said anything? Why had he let the distance grow? The lesson. Liam sat down in his father's old chair, the journal still open in his hands. He felt a lump forming in his throat as he read the words again. His father had realized his mistake. He just hadn't known how to fix it. Time, it seemed, was the lesson. His father had been trying to teach him that rushing through life, trying to control everything, only made things worse. Sometimes, you had to step back and let time do its work. But there was more. Liam flipped through the next few pages, finding more entries about their strained relationship. Each one spoke of regret, of wanting to repair the bond, but not knowing how. His father had been a man of logic, but when it came to emotions, he had been just as lost as Liam. At the end of the journal, there was one final entry, written just a few weeks before his father's death. I wish I had more time with him. I wish I had done things differently. But perhaps this is how it had to be. Liam needs to find his own way. And maybe, in the end, he'll see that I was trying to help, even if I didn't always know how. Liam closed the journal, tears stinging his eyes. His father had cared. He had always cared, even if he hadn't known how to show it. The next step, Liam spent the next few hours in the study, going through the journal and other old letters his father had left behind. Each one revealed more about the man Thomas had been, his hopes, his dreams, and his regrets. By the time Liam left the house, it was late, and the streets were quiet. He walked slowly, his thoughts heavy but clearer than they had been in years. His father had left him more than just messages. He had left him a path to understanding. As Liam reached his apartment, He found another envelope waiting for him in the mailbox. His name was written on it in the same familiar handwriting. Inside was a small card with just a few words written on it. You've learned about time. Now it's time to learn about trust. Go to the place where trust was first broken, and you'll find your next message. Liam's mind raced. Trust. Where had trust been broken? And what did his father mean by that? As he lay in bed that night, Liam realized that this journey was far from over. There were still more lessons to learn, more truths to uncover. And even though his father was gone, it felt like he was closer to him now than ever before. Cliffhanger. The next morning, Liam woke up with a sense of determination. He didn't know where this journey would lead, but he knew one thing for sure. He was going to see it through to the end. His father had left him a final gift, one that went beyond money or possessions. It was a gift of understanding, of growth, of connection. And Liam wasn't going to waste it. Episode 3. The Place of Broken Trust. Liam stood in front of the small park at the edge of the city, staring at the bench where he and his father had sat so many years ago. It was a place filled with memories, some good, some painful. But now, with his father's final message echoing in his mind, it had taken on a new significance. This was the place where trust had first been broken. He could still remember the day clearly. He had been 17, just starting to rebel against his father's strict rules. He had lied to his father, telling him he was going to a study group when, in reality, he had been meeting up with friends at a concert. When his father had found out, it had shattered something between them. It wasn't just the lie that hurt. It was the fact that Liam had broken the trust his father had worked so hard to build. Liam took a deep breath and sat down on the bench. It felt surreal, being back here after all these years. He looked around, wondering if there was something he was supposed to find, another clue. Perhaps. But nothing seemed out of place. Just the quiet hum of the city in the background and the distant laughter of children playing. Reflections on trust. As he sat there, Liam thought about the nature of trust, how easily it could be broken, and how hard it was to rebuild. His father had always been a man of rules, and for him, trust had been the foundation of everything. But Liam, in his youthful rebellion, hadn't understood that. He had taken his father's trust for granted, never realizing how precious it was until it was too late. Now, with his father's final message pushing him to confront that mistake, Liam felt a deep sense of regret. He wished he could go back to that day on this very bench and tell his father the truth. But time had taken that opportunity away. All he had left were the lessons his father was trying to teach him, even from beyond the grave. Liam pulled out his phone and looked at the small card again. Go to the place where trust was first broken, and you'll find your next message. But there was no message here, at least none that he could see. A voice from the past, just as Liam was about to leave. His phone buzzed in his hand. It was a message from an unknown number. His heart raced as he opened it. Trust is fragile, but it can be rebuilt. Look beneath the surface. Liam frowned, glancing around the park. What did the message mean? He stood up, scanning the area for anything unusual. And then he noticed a small, worn envelope tucked beneath the bench. His hands trembled as he pulled it out. Inside was another letter written in his father's unmistakable handwriting. Son, I know that day hurt us both. I should have listened more, and you should have trusted me enough to tell the truth. But the past is the past, and we can't change it. What we can do is learn from it. Trust is something that can be rebuilt if we're willing to put in the work. It starts with honesty, with vulnerability. I wasn't always good at that, but I hope you will be. And remember, trust isn't just about not lying. It's about being there for the people you love, no matter what. Liam felt a lump form in his throat as he read the words. His father had known all along. He had known about the lie, about the concert, and about the broken trust. But instead of confronting Liam back then, he had chosen to let him learn the lesson on his own. A new understanding. For the first time in years, Liam felt a sense of peace wash over him. His father hadn't been angry. He had been hurt. Yes. But more than that, he had been trying to understand. And now, through these messages, he was helping Liam understand too. Trust wasn't just about keeping promises. It was about being open, about showing up, about letting people in even when it was hard. Liam had spent so many years pushing people away, afraid of being hurt, afraid of breaking their trust. But now he realized that trust was something that had to be nurtured. Even when it was difficult, he sat back down on the bench, his father's words still fresh in his mind. This was the lesson his father had been trying to teach him all along. It wasn't about rules or discipline. It was about connection, about building something stronger than just surface-level promises. The final test. Liam knew there was still more to learn. His father's messages had been carefully crafted, each one revealing a new layer of understanding. But now, standing in the place where trust had once been broken, Liam felt like he was finally starting to see the bigger picture. He pulled out his phone, ready to respond to the unknown number that had sent him the message earlier. But before he could type anything, another message appeared. You've learned about trust. Now it's time for the final lesson. Go to the place where it all began, and you'll find what you're looking for. Liam's mind raced. The place where it all began? What could that mean? His father had been a man of logic, of reason, but now it seemed like he was leading Liam towards something deeper, something more emotional. As Liam stood up to leave, he glanced back at the bench one last time. This had been the place where trust had been broken, but it was also the place where it had started to be rebuilt. And with that thought, Liam set off on the next part of his journey, ready to face whatever final challenge his father had left for him. Cliffhanger. Liam walked through the city streets, his heart pounding with anticipation. He didn't know where this journey would end, but he was ready to find out. His father's final message was waiting for him, and with it, the answers he had been seeking for so long. Episode 4. The beginning of clarity. Liam's mind raced as he walked toward the place where everything had begun. He thought back to the clues his father had left for him, each message a carefully crafted lesson, leading him not just to find physical objects, but to uncover deeper truths about himself and their relationship. His father had always been deliberate, a man who believed in solving problems with reason and logic. But now, Liam realized there had been more emotion beneath the surface than he had ever given him credit for. The text message from the unknown number echoed in his mind. Go to the place where it all began. Liam could only think of one place that fit: his childhood home. It was the house where his parents had raised him, the house where they had laughed, cried, and, most importantly, shared the love and lessons that shaped him into who he was today. Returning to the roots, as Liam neared the old house, a wave of nostalgia hit him. It looked the same as he remembered. The white picket fence, the tall oak tree in the front yard, and the front door that always creaked slightly when opened. He hadn't been here in years, not since his father had passed. It was strange to think that he was returning now, guided by a message from a man who was no longer alive. Liam hesitated at the front door, his hand hovering over the knob. What was he supposed to find here? Would there be another letter, another message from his father? Or was this final task about something more abstract, something he had to figure out on his own? He pushed the door open and stepped inside. A home full of memories. The inside of the house hadn't changed much either. The living room still had the same brown leather sofa, worn from years of use. The old clock on the mantel ticked softly, just as it always had. But there was a stillness in the air now, a quietness that hadn't been there when his father was alive. Liam walked through the house, each room bringing back memories. The kitchen, where his mother had taught him how to cook. The dining room, where his father had held family meetings, always stressing the importance of communication. And finally, his father's study, the room that had always felt off limits to him as a child. The door to the study was slightly ajar, and Liam pushed it open with a sense of anticipation. The room was exactly as his father had left it. Books lined the shelves. Papers were neatly stacked on the desk, and the leather chair sat waiting, as though expecting its owner to return. The final lesson. Liam walked over to the desk and sat down. It felt strange sitting in his father's chair, as though he were stepping into a role he wasn't quite ready for. But as he glanced around the room, he noticed something he hadn't expected. A small box sat on the desk, with an envelope placed on top. The envelope had his name on it. With trembling hands, Liam opened the envelope and pulled out the letter inside. It was short, written in his father's familiar handwriting. "Son, this is where it all began. This is where I learned to be a father, to guide you, and to trust you to make your own decisions. I made mistakes, and I know you did too. But that's part of life. The final lesson I want to leave you with is this: don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to love, to trust, and to fail. It's through those experiences that we truly grow." Open the box. It holds something I've been meaning to give you for a long time. Liam set the letter down and opened the box. Inside was a small, polished stone with the word clarity engraved on it. A moment of realization. As Liam held the stone in his hand, he understood. His father's final message wasn't about solving a puzzle or finding a hidden treasure. It was about clarity, about seeing things for what they truly were. His father had always been trying to teach him to look beyond the surface, to find the deeper meaning in everything. Liam realized that his journey, from the broken trust to the lessons on love and vulnerability, had been about finding clarity in his own life. His father hadn't just been giving him instructions. He had been helping Liam discover who he really was. And now, holding the stone in his hand, Liam felt a sense of peace. His father's final message had been delivered, and it had been exactly what Liam needed. Not closure, but clarity. Moving forward, Liam left the house that day feeling lighter, more certain of himself. He didn't have all the answers. Life would still be full of challenges and uncertainties. But now, he understood the importance of trusting himself, of being open to love and vulnerability, and of seeking clarity in every situation. His father's final message had been about more than just solving a mystery. It had been about passing on wisdom, about teaching Liam how to live a life full of meaning. And with that realization, Liam knew that he was ready to move forward, carrying his father's lessons with him into the future. The end of the journey. As Liam walked away from his childhood home, he smiled. The journey had been difficult, full of emotional twists and turns. But in the end, it had led him exactly where he needed to be. And though his father was no longer physically with him, Liam knew that his spirit would always be there, guiding him, teaching him, and helping him find clarity in every step of his life. The moral of Father's final message is about the importance of finding clarity in life through self-discovery, love, and vulnerability. The story teaches us that 1. Vulnerability is strength. Being open to love, trust, and even failure helps us grow and understand ourselves better. 2. Clarity comes from within. The answers to life's challenges are often found by looking beyond the surface and understanding our own emotions and motivations. 3. Life's journey is about learning. Every mistake, success, and challenge is an opportunity to learn and gain clarity about who we are and what truly matters. Now, let's enhance our vocabulary skills. Vulnerability. The state of being open to emotional hurt or risk. Example. Being vulnerable in relationships allows for deeper connections. Clarity. The quality of being clear and easy to understand. Example. After thinking deeply, she found clarity about her feelings. Journey. The act of traveling from one place to another, physically or emotionally. Example. Life is a journey full of challenges and growth. Discovery. The act of finding or learning something for the first time. Example. His journey was also a path of self-discovery. Mistake. An error or fault in judgment or action. Example. Everyone makes mistakes, but it's important to learn from them. Emotion. A strong feeling such as happiness, sadness, or anger. Example. He had trouble expressing his emotions, but eventually opened up. Insight. A deep understanding of a situation or oneself. Example. Her father's final words gave her insight into his life lessons. Growth. The process of developing mentally, emotionally, or physically. Example. Emotional growth often comes from difficult experiences. Trust. Belief in the reliability or honesty of someone. Example. Trust is essential in every meaningful relationship. Connection. A relationship between people or things where they share a bond. Example. Their connection grew stronger over time. I hope you love the story as much as I enjoyed sharing it. Don't forget to subscribe for more great stories. Come back soon, and until then, keep spreading kindness.